Oh shit, what a fun game, dude. I can't believe Kaga had the power in him to make a good game, barring the obnoxious bullshit. I didn't think he had it in him. Yo, what you thought of that shit?
That street.
Yo, the story was pretty alright. It's simple and to the point. I guess I just find it surprising that there's another whole Saga of the Mars story, especially when the first game clearly meant to end on the War of Shadows. And yes, I know that the first game was originally going to be the only Fire Emblem game. Get the fuck off of me, please. Too bad we dumbass Americans won't get to experience it all when the game or its remake never came out of Japan. If only the Shadow Dragon remake didn't suck so fucking much. It's very point A to point B, which works here and in a lot of GBA games because unlike Engage, this game understands what fucking world building is right from the get-go on the world map. You're given a backstory to get up to speed, and the tone of the world is set while also having exposition about each area you're in before starting a map. It's a whole new saga this time around, continuing where the first left off, and it feels like a breath of fresh air. I really like how it feels like a grand adventure is unfolding as you progress through Alakanaya, and I'm a huge fan of any Fire Emblem story that starts out at a place so simple and ends somewhere like a big tower. It's one of those early Fire Emblem stories that just feels so simple yet effective. Especially during early Kaga Era where it was kind of just two idiots talking on screen. But yeah, huge step up from the previous two games for being so much more than just a simple wartime plot that the series kind of loves rehashing. It's a mystery, and it's nice to see it go into things that were never really explained during the first game. I never knew about a series plot device having a curse around it because some dude stole it and used it to fund an army. Never questioned why Mamkins existed, but I guess it's cool to know why Dragonstones exist. You know, until the series just sells that shit in the fucking armory and none of that matters. This game is kind of the start of the story being one of the most defining things about the Kaga Era Fire Emblem, because the gameplay from here on out leaves a lot to be desired. That Gunpla. If you played the original game, then you already understand how this game works. And since everyone watching this video will understand how this dumbass series works, we should more so talk about the changes compared to the first game and the quality of life that some of it adds. There's a Mode 7 style world map where you're given world building and expedition before being transferred to a level. Battle preparations are actual fucking battle preparations, and you can access the convoy and trade between units to prepare everyone before starting a map. Inventory management is actually fucking manageable. Gone are the days of the stupid fucking convoy tick that you have to go through. You can trade freely between units and it doesn't take a fucking turn just to do one thing. If your inventory is full, you can just send it to the convoy. If you need something out of the convoy, just go to Mark. Everyone has a separate inventory for both weapons and items compared to later games where both are kind of just combined into one thing. Onto the map itself, you can see both the ranges for the player and the enemy, but it's kind of confusing if you're used to later games because they're so blue or red square to indicate where you or the enemy can really attack. You just kind of have to do that yourself. Thankfully, they noticed that for the next game. The shops and armories generally had some of the same weapon or item instead of just having some armories only a couple weapons and some shops only a couple of staves and items. And you can back out of the arena now, but the arena really sucks massive levels of ass in this game. You engage in this slow turn-based round system where each person attacks and then another round kind of plays out. You have to back out at the end of that specific round, but the arenas are so batshit crazy. Because they just throw pre-promotes at you with silver weapons, and it's a fucking death wish to anybody who goes in there without nearly perfect stats. And here I thought Thrasia's arena was unforgiving. This one, you can just never fucking win half of the time. Most units that couldn't promote in the original game like Hunters can actually promote now. And speaking of promotions, they actually feel like a fucking promotion. No more of this stupid bullshit where they get nothing if a unit's stats surpass the promotion's base stats. And promoting early in this game doesn't hurt you in the long run this time around because your stats cap out at 20 anyway. Though everyone still gets the same amount of experience regardless of whether they've been promoted or not, and this is kind of the last game to do that because later games cut the amount of experience you can earn after promotion because of balancing purposes, I guess. There's also this kinda unnecessary mount and dismount mechanic. You'll probably never make use of it outdoors, but now indoors, you're forced to dismount, which results in lower stats in some areas, and lots of units being sword locked. I don't get why it's here, since the first two games never had it, but the GBA games would get rid of it, but Three Houses and Engage would kinda bring it back, but it's much better in those games because you don't suffer as much from it. And in terms of the battles themselves, the UI is infinitely better now. We got a background and foreground now, which is alright at best. It's a start from what we'd eventually get, and the animations are also kind of alright. They look very stiff, and some of them are extremely slow, man. While it's definitely an upgrade from anything they did on the Famicom, Fire Emblem wouldn't really get decent animations until the GBA games, so this is kind of that weird transition era into where they start getting good, but not as good as they'd eventually become. Only for them to get worse and to become good again. Though we can actually see the percentages instead of it being a fucking bar to where you have to guess it, which was kind of annoying, but I do actually like the HP bar. I kind of wish the modern games kept it, because I liked it a lot more than Echoes, Three Houses, and Engage's little bar that just kind of gets longer the more HP they have. And yeah, I think that's all the new stuff that this game brings gameplay-wise. I can't really think of anything else at the moment. That difficult. Mystery of the Emblem difficulty-wise is pretty intermediate, even at the beginning of the game, and then it gets pretty goddamn hard through the mid to late game. In the beginning, you're pretty weak. And without the defense, you take a lot of damage too. You also go up against a bunch of Draco Knights with a ton of defense that only your archers and mages can do decent damage against, while everyone else just kinda does fucking nothing. Even with decent weapons, you're doing 3 to 4 damage at most. The moment somebody brings in a Steel Lance, you're taking even more damage. Then it doesn't help that Chapter 6 or so is when you deal with the most obnoxious, non-stop reinforcer spamming that goes on. Then at the end of the early game, you're trying to escape and you're faced with a bunch of pre-promotes holding strong-ass weapons that cleave a majority of your fucking health. It's fucking difficult, man. Then the mid-game is filled with the fucking dragons that negate your defense that you can only take a single hit from or otherwise you're fucking dead. And when you're not taking a hit from them, you're dealing with barbarians with devil axes that never fucking backfire on them, and they already deal more than enough damage. You're constantly having to focus on your positioning because if you make one wrong move, you're restarting that bitch. And then there's, I guess, late game? It's mostly doable if you cheese because most of the maps fucking suck ass, bro. The first map when you get back is pretty doable. Everyone is mostly on par, but then the next couple of maps suffer from this thing I like to call terrible game design, where it's really just fucking luck. But this is the Kaga Era, so that's really to be expected. Then there's the actual late game where the difficulty kind of lowers intermediate again because you had the HP to deal with mostly everyone that's not the stupid bitch who brings your HP down to 1. Until the final chapter, which is just luck-based bullshit anyway. But don't feel too bad, you could be dealing with the remake's interpretation of it. Overall, yeah, FE3 is pretty difficult, and it's kind of unforgiving at times. You get some broken stuff to cheese some pretty badly designed maps near the end, but most of that unforgiving shit is due to bad map design though. Now whether this is good difficulty design or not, most of the time it fucking isn't. Right, yeah, well, can we talk about this game's RNG? Like, it's the same RNG, but like, why is it so fucking forgiving towards the player? Well, I mean, most of the time it is. Like, you still get hit by every fucking 30 half of the time instead of all the time, but this is the one game where you can just dodge 370s and 80s in a row, and I don't understand why. I can even land most of my 80s and 90s no problem. Like, who coded the RNG in this game, and why couldn't they come back for the next two? Because whoever coded the RNG in those games are a fucking bitch. Not to mention that everyone is a fucking critting machine. It doesn't matter how low your crit is, you just crit all the fucking time. Like, it's really fucking legendary. Them graphics. You know, I really like the game this way it looks, even though it's fucking aged compared to the next two on the Super Famicom. It reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy IV, which I think predates this by 2 years. It's just this style of Super Nintendo games that I really enjoy looking at with the amount of color and detail these games have. While the animations are pretty meh due to how stiff they are, I like the UI of it all when you're not playing on a shitty translation patch. I like whatever the effect is called in the background. I think Final Fantasy VII used it too? Parallax scrolling or something? The scrolling clouds in the background. I like that there's even a background at all, to be honest, because looking at a black screen is pretty goddamn boring after a while, but it's understandable due to the limitations of the Famicom. And also, these character portraits look really good. They don't look jagged or weird like they did in the first game. It's that anime style that I really like. And I don't get why the DS remakes fucked it up so bad. But yeah, that's kind of all I can really say about the graphics. I like it, and it's a huge improvement over the previous two games. That music. Oh my god, dude. This era of Fire Emblem has produced some of the series' best music. Fire Emblem never misses with its music, even if no one remembers that music. And every game in this era uses the Super Famicom's capabilities to produce some of the most memorable music. FE3 doesn't even show what the best that they can do with it. There wasn't a single player phase or enemy phase that I didn't like in this game. Almost every track fit the moment perfectly. It's insane how one small block with a bunch of tiny chips or one single tiny chip is producing all of this. That Grunia Expedition track sounds like an exposition. Henri's Way sounds like a log trek through multiple areas. Its enemy phase variant highlights that danger of it all. Liberation sounds like the perfect theme of an army fighting a liberated country. And that last one? God damn, that's the perfect finale music to any Fire Emblem in-game. Can we talk about that battle theme? It's such an adrenaline rush hearing this the moment when you enter a battle. It just perfectly captures that feeling of attacking something while also sounding 90s as fuck. It's a very well made and well crafted soundtrack, and the one thing I always look forward to when playing this game. While Mystery of the Emblem is high up there on one of my favorite Fire Emblems, it's not very hard to notice the more obnoxious game design choices here and there. And I'm talking about Book 2 here. Book 1 is for later because most of that one we kind of already went over with the first PDR. Let's start with the beginning of Book 2. The beginning is a slog, and the first handful of chapters kind of fucking suck. It doesn't help that some of the enemy phases are so goddamn slow. People complain about Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn having some of the longest enemy phases, but these games take that shit to a whole new fucking level. Even the first chapter is fucking bad. Let's have a map where only Mark can progress through the majority of it while everyone else just sits there and picks out the constant thief reinforcements. It's just extremely slow when only Mark can move through the mountains. The second map is also extremely slow too. You'll come to see how FE3 has some of the most abnormally big ass maps, even though you only move through a portion of it. It's a big forest where you can only move so much, and it's even slower when the archers move like 2 spaces at a time in them. It's even slower when you have to carefully position everyone due to how punishing the Draco Knights are. Then there's the elephant in the room, Chapter 3. The entire time is spent walking around this big ass circle just so you can get Julian and slowly lure these Dragon Knights in. Fuck up once and you're redoing all that shit. Now, I know I can use Ward's bridge key and all that, but if you wanted Mathis, getting him will be much more difficult. But I'd also have to argue that the map should have just been better designed regardless. No one wants to slowly move all these units around in a circle, especially if there's nothing really there. Then the last one is Chapter 6. The minor issue is that it's too big. The major issue revolves around a constant issue with Kaga's games, and it's the unnecessary need to spam reinforcements for a lengthy amount of turns. The Akanaya games suffer from this badly, and FE3 kinda makes this issue even worse. The beginning is mostly fine, but if you don't have a certain amount of people blocking the spots of reinforcements come from, then you have to wait them all out and it feels like forever. It's just not a fun thing to experience. To reiterate, I don't mind the idea of reinforcements, but you can't keep spamming them forever. It ruins the pacing of the map and it gets fucking boring sitting in one place forever. Isn't that right, Engage? The mid-game had some minor issues with a couple instances of slow movement and proper positioning when it came to the dragons to negate your defense, or the boring desert map and ice map, but they weren't as major for me as the early game was. Then there's this point during the early late game where the maps start getting really obnoxious. Especially Chapter 16. I got so fucking annoyed playing this one. There's this thief on the map that opens a chest, which causes the entire right side of the map to be revealed. You got 2 people on your ass. The mercenaries who were chasing you chapters ago, and the soldiers, mages, and 1 sniper with a fucking killer bow coming towards you. Could I have just done some wacky Razire shit with Linda or something? Sure. But my dumb ass thought that holding myself up in this space would be better than getting Pincer trying to kill these mercenaries all at once. Could I have killed these mercenaries during the beginning of the games? Yeah, sure. But who the fuck would do that when their stats are better than yours? The risk of death isn't really worth the reward here. I died so many fucking times here, man. It's not like you can just simply kill the thief before they unlock the chest, because there's other strong people sitting over there who will easily kill you. All you can do is hope you kill enough of the soldiers before they reach you, or just get lucky. It fucking sucks, especially when you have a thief holding an item that's required for you to beat the game. Or get the good ending, I guess. I never tried that shit. There just shouldn't be hordes of units coming towards you. Yeah, your party should be good by this point, but there's only so much chip damage you can take from these soldiers and mages while also taking a fucking miracle sword and then some to the face. Come the fuck on, man. I swear Chapter 18 is near goddamn impossible if you don't cheese in the beginning. You're in this pincer attack with 2 armies, and Marth has to reach the village in time before the Wolf Knights just nearly eviscerate everyone in your party if they can't dodge properly. Marth is placed in such a terrible spot that even with the boots given to him, there's no way he'd be able to make it in time without the player losing somebody. Yeah, I get it. We got ambushed or whatever, but what the fuck can you do in this situation? Shit, man, Thracia did a better job with that ambush map, and I fucking hate admitting that shit. Then they keep spamming these fucking Draco Knights every fucking turn after the fact. Imagine if I didn't get to the house yet. I'd get overwhelmed. Chapters 19 and 20 I didn't even really play. I cheesed the fuck out of them, but I remember them being obnoxious as a kid, with 19 having ambush spawns to the castle, and 20 having meteor mages that I couldn't fucking dodge. If only I had the concept of the dumbest silent staff in the series. Then there's the final 4. The first 2 are pretty doable, and I don't really have that much that I didn't like about those. The third one is kind of annoying with other silent staff, and killing Garneth in time is kind of a bitch if you don't crit or have the again staff with you. But the final map is just luck-based fucking bullshit. I already didn't like the fact that you need to bring units with you who you may not have ever thought to use, but they also have to talk to these sisters too. It's not really the talking to them part that I can't stand, it's more so the let's spam these dragons at you who have at most like a 30 to 50 hit chance range, while also hoping that the player doesn't get fucked over by it. Fuck that shit. But yeah, that's kinda all I didn't really like about it. But yeah, right, Book 1. I kinda forgot that this game was a remake too. Book 1 is the remake of the first game, cut down to 20 chapters instead of 24? I'm too lazy to look. And remade to look better, and that's kind of it. It's very underwhelming. Though understandably so due to the Super Famicom's limitations and cartridge space. Packing 2 big-ass games on here would be more than difficult without cutting stuff out. 4 or so chapters were cut from the game, and while I'm perfectly fine with those chapters being cut because they kinda sucked ass, let's be honest. But because those maps were cut out, the devs didn't really tune the enemies that you face to make up for the fact that those maps were cut out. So as a result, the balancing and level progression suffer. You can barely double anything for the longest time, and it's so goddamn slow. You don't get a reliable healer until like 4 chapters of the game because we cut out the healer that was given to you in the first chapter of the original game. You're stuck doing chip damage for forever. Even the motherfuckers who can double end up doing the same amount of damage as the ones who can't double. Like it's completely night and day compared to Book 2. I was just bored playing it, and I see why I hadn't beaten it again or went back to it since I was a child. It just wasn't a good remake, and to be honest, if I had to choose, I'd play the first game if the DS remake didn't exist, but since the DS remake does exist, I'd say to avoid the original and Book 1 like the fucking plague. In conclusion, even though I criticized a lot about this game, Mystery of the Emblem is still a fairly decent Kaga Era Fire Emblem game, and still one of my all-time favorites in the series. It's a remake while also being a completely new game that expands upon the world and gameplay mechanics of the first game, and sets a standard for what the series would later drastically change and or improve upon. While Book 1 left a lot to be desired due to technical limitations of the Super Famicom and poor balancing, Book 2, even with its issues, provides a mostly fun and standardized Fire Emblem experience that's not easily found for the remainder of the Kaga era. Most of everything that this game had is what I wanted something in the other 2 games to have. Aspects of a decent story, good quality of life, and just be fun to play. It isn't perfect by any means, and it has its fair share of Kaga-isms that go to annoy me about a lot of games in this era that I mentioned earlier, but the simple story that expands upon the original game's lore and the streamlined approach to gameplay and map design make it one of my favorites in this dumbass series.
I'm going to die.